uh, I'm running out of bookmarks and I don't have any way to print any others, nor do I have the paper on which to print them. Card paper?
Huh?
Card?
If you don't mind what color it is.
It's got to be card stock to do it is all. Otherwise it's just too floppy, but that'd be cool.
That whole stack for me, about that much in there.
Really? Alright. Maybe I'll work on getting something ready then. Actually, I need to look to make sure if I have any. Anyway, let's get started with this morning. We're just about through the book, which is kind of surprising. We've only been at it since January. No, we started Ruth December 13th is all. 4 chapters, and we're just now in the 4th. It's been what, 4 months? 3 months? Okay. Although I was gone for a little bit of that, so that helps that way. And I screwed up my record, and so I don't know what I did for a couple of those weeks there. I find this to be a fascinating book, though. One that we can learn heaps from if we would just take everything in context and understand what it's trying to say. And it's not that I have it down pat. I don't. I readily admit that. I wish I did, but I don't. But it's got enough in it that a guy could really learn how we fit in with the overall scheme of God's redemption of mankind. I don't want to go back through all of it again. We've done that just about every week, trying to pull continuity back into it. But I do want to say this as we start, that if you have become a child of God, this is how you go about doing it. If you're not, then you don't have it. If you did it a different way, through something other than the full purchase redemption, then you're not a child of God. You can't be redeemed without having that price fully paid. If it was only partially paid, I was thinking about this. If it's only partially paid, then you're only partially redeemed. And if you're only partially redeemed, then you've got to come up with the rest yourself. If you have to come up with the rest yourself, then God's plan of salvation is inadequate and yours is actually better than God's. Well, we know that that's not the case. Therefore, it's whole redemption or it's no redemption. That's all it is. You can't have a sort of redeemed person. That's not how it works. The one who in the New Testament said, "Almost you persuade me," was not there. You can't almost when it comes to this. People try to use that as a way that I'm really a good person. You know, I don't do anything really wrong, not bad wrong anyhow. And it just doesn't fly. If I almost got in a wreck while driving, that word almost means that I didn't. I mean, let's face it, it may have been close, but if I have to say I almost got in a wreck, that means I did not. Why is it that I almost am convinced of salvation would even come close to being adequate. That almost means you're not. That's in context, in practicality, in every way you look at it, that's the way it is. Christ had the opportunity and took the opportunity to buy back mankind with a price that only he could pay. That's where we're at with this today. We're starting up with verse 7. I'm debating on whether to. Okay, last week I'll just start in. Last week we looked at the fact that he was. There was somebody who potentially was, at least was believed to be able to redeem. He said, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. I won't do it. I can't, his words, the close relative said in verse 6, I cannot redeem it for myself. Can't do it. It'll screw up my whole plan if I do. I can't do it. Actually, it was more really that he won't. But his words were, I can't, and I think that's significant. Okay, now we have somebody who can and who is willing to, that's going to step in. Verse 7, now it was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging to confirm anything. One man took off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was a confirmation in Israel. Okay, that's nothing more, nothing less than an explanation. Okay, that's all it is. Don't have to read anything into it. I've heard people talking about the one sandaled person, people talking about the act of handing the sandal to another person, and no, all it is an explanation. That's it. In times past, they had this way of proving their commitment to, if I'm going to be the Redeemer, and you're actually capable but won't, then what we'll do is I'll give you my sandal and that makes it mine. Okay, all that is an explanation of why the next events are about to take place. Therefore, the close relative, this is verse 8, said to Boaz, buy it for yourself. So he took off his sandal. Buy it for yourself. You want to redeem it? Redeem it. You're going to have to pay the whole price. You're going to have to do everything that needs to be done to do this. I relinquish my right to that. You go ahead and you buy it. You pay everything. In the grand scheme of things, who else technically had the right to the souls of men when it came to their eternal state? Think about this. This is kind of a trick question, but it's kind of an important one. We're going to propose something here. Satan had a right to those. Because when he talked man into sinning, and man sinned, they became, for all practical purposes, his property. And then here's Jesus willing to buy them back, redeem them, and Satan couldn't. All he could do in the long run was relinquish his right to that soul through redemption. That's all he could do. And I hope you understand what I'm talking about with this. I'm not trying to say that Satan has extra authority, that he's all this and then some. No, that's not it. But God himself called him the little g God of this world because he owns people, manipulates people.
You know, in that one place there in John, he says, you're of the father, you are of your father, the devil.
Absolutely. Yes, you're of your father the devil. Well, why? Because he owns you. Well, here's one that's going to buy back, or as we'll call it, redeem. And that alone gives him full right. Full right. Satan had to relinquish it to Jesus. And there's nothing he can do. If Jesus says, that soul is mine, guess whose it is? It's Jesus's. We're all given that choice. Just like Ruth was given the choice. Do you want to go back to your gods, or do you want to come with me? That wasn't the actual way it was worded or anything, but that was, in essence, the choice she was given. She chose to go with her mother-in-law to follow her God. Okay? Then she was given a choice of, what do I do now that I'm here? Do I stay in poverty, or do I go look for some way to eat? Chose to go to Boaz's place, check it out, glean there. He saw, liked what he saw, and chose to redeem. And that's the story of man. That's the story of man. Boaz, this is verse 9, Boaz said to the elders of the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's and all that was Chilion's and Mahlon's from the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, I have acquired as my wife to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from his brethren and from his position at the gate. You are witnesses this day. You see what I've done. I have chosen to pay the price. Now, notice some tense here. He says, you see that I have, and I have. Had he yet? Not. There was nothing past, but the promise was made. What a tremendous little aspect of it. It wasn't that he had literally pulled out his wallet and handed out the money as he was supposed to. He'd, at that point, literally done nothing. Now, you jump ahead to Jesus, and what did he say? Before he died, I've come to seek and to save that which was lost. Had he done it yet? Not in that sense, no. The price hadn't been paid yet. But he knew what his job was, and he knew of his commitment. Therefore, it was a done deal. Just like Boaz was able to say about Naomi, it was a done deal. It was done. At that point, for all practical purposes, they were betrothed. You can't get a tighter relationship than that. One was given to the other. Who gives this lady to this man? I do. Okay? That's kind of what went on here. You have the right to it, but I want it. Can I have it? You bet. Okay? That's kind of what went on. Now, in our sense, we are, at this point, betrothed to Christ. It's the redemption has been. How many of us truly, well, I got to say this carefully. How many of us have truly acquired full grasp of said redemption? I'd say none of us. We know we're redeemed. We know we are bought with a price, but we aren't in a situation to realize that yet. To us, it's nothing more than a promise. When our eyes close in death, or when Christ comes and brings us as his bride back to be with himself, then we will understand the full redemption. Now, I don't want to make light of what Christ did and is doing in our lives as people today. That's not the point with that. The point is, we haven't made full realization of that redemption until we've been conjoined with him. There will be at one point a marriage supper of the Lamb. That will be the starting point for all practical purposes of that culmination. Then the marriage is a reality. Okay? We see that in Song of Solomon. Very clear in Song of Solomon. Okay? They're betrothed. He's left somebody with her to protect her, as Christ did with the church, the Holy Spirit. He's in us. The groom and the bride are one, but not conjoined yet. That's the situation. It's. I hope it's not coming out as crooked as it almost seems to. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, I have acquired as my wife. That's an important word right there. Okay, it's not as an object. It's not as a tool. It's not as anything that man might perpetuate on another person by purchase. Rather, he bought her as his wife. It's supposed to be. I don't know that it is anymore, particularly. You see it from time to time, and I know of plenty of marriages where this is the case, but it's supposed to be that you're married due to one perpetual aspect, and that's love. So in this, what do we see? We see that he loved her and did everything he could to bring that relationship from a distant one to one now of oneness, to be united. And Jesus loves us and sees that we're not together, and he paid that price so that we could be. And it's the same exact situation, only in a much grander scale. This is nothing more than a picture being painted. I talked about that clear back at the start of this book. Some of you might remember, I don't know. It's like a beautiful painting being painted, and we don't see the whole thing quite yet, but God has in mind this beautiful tapestry painting, and he's putting it all together, and the beauty that will come from it is just astounding. that's what he's doing with this, showing us a piece of this beautiful picture of Christ and his bride. Redemption is a fact. Now it's up to us whether we want to do anything with it. Now, I want to step back for just a second here, and I want to ask this question, and I want you to really think about it. Had Ruth had any part in this? The only thing she did was pursued it. The redemption was solely done by Boaz. That's it. Solely done by Boaz. Somebody who didn't belong there was now going to belong because Boaz was paying the price. That's it. Verse 11. And all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, "We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, the two who built the house of Israel, and may you prosper in that long word and be famous in Bethlehem." If you want to try to say it, you go ahead. I don't care. Okay, there you go. Thank you. I'm not in a mood to fight with words this morning. Okay, blessing because of it. Because he was the Redeemer, the people were offering him a blessing. Does that bring to mind anything with Christ? Because he's the Redeemer, even now, around the throne, is being sung and stated, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive honor and glory and power and blessing." Go into Revelation 1, 2. Let's see, Revelation 1. Well, go through the book of Revelation. Let's just put it that way. See how many times, because in the end it's doing it too. That a blessing is offered to Christ because he paid the price. By not only the redeemed, which we'll see coming up later, but by people who know of the redeemed. These people weren't the redeemed. They knew the redeemed. And now because of that, the Redeemer is offered a blessing. Angels are crowded around the throne, praising Jesus for what he did, even though they are not the redeemed. They never were. Might we say it this way? They can't be. There's no redemption for an angel. Rebellion against God is absolute, utter destruction for an angel.
Even those that didn't rebel still couldn't be redeemed.
No, they just can't. So they know nothing really of redemption, but they praise Jesus because he's the Redeemer, the one who was slain. That's that part of the picture right there. Oh, that we would understand even a portion of that. I don't get it in my puny mind. Probably y'all don't either. I'm not going to call your minds puny or I'll get beat up afterwards. If you want to call it that, you can. I call mine that, not yours. I'm going to skip the second part of the blessing for sake of time, and I want to move down to verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. There's the culmination of it right there. Now remember who she is, who she was. Somebody who was a God, well, a godful foreigner with multitudes, probably, of gods, as was the custom of most nations around. Multitudes of gods. When her sister returned, she returned to her pluralized, small g, gods, and she chose the one. Now she sees redemption, the buying back, the paying the price, and the wedding. Now she's part of that family. Married in, granted. Married in. Do I have right to be a child of God? No. I'm grafted in. That's my only hope. That's how I have a right to Christ, if I have anything, because He took me and grafted me into the vine. I've done multitudes of grafts in my time, and some have taken and some haven't. Some were doing absolutely great and were destroyed by people who didn't know what I was doing with it. Broken off and destroyed. Even though I explained, don't mess with this, it's a graft, please leave it alone, they still fiddled with it till it broke and didn't grow. But I've done multitudes of grafts that did work, including some that were not supposed to work by all practical rights. I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying it to illustrate. I've been grafted in, and praise God it worked. It's one that held. It's one that held. Jesus talked about 4 different types of, I'm going to change his wording just a little bit to fit it in with this, the grafts. Ones that didn't take it all, ones that didn't work at all, ones that worked. And if Jesus is talking about that, how much more are we? But, I praise God, not because I'm something special and it worked, but because people cared enough to tend me, because God started the work and other people tended it, and now I'm grafted in. What a tremendous thought. Y'all might say the same thing. That's what it's all about. I can look at it and I can say redemption is fully mine because I am grafted into the Redeemer. I'm grafted in. Jesus said, I'm the vine, you're the branches. He also said we were grafted into the vine. Who am I grafted into if he's the vine? Him. I mean, this isn't rocket science. Again, it's pretty simple stuff to figure out. I'm grafted into him. And nothing has broken me away from that. Might we know some people who had that happen? How many people sat back here in Lighthouse Club or in youth group or out here in church services and places like that and said, yes, I want to become a Christian, and said a prayer and stuff and went out and nothing came of it? Nothing. Some people are grafted in and it's a successful graft, and some people are grafted in and it's just no, all they're doing is trying it out. One thing I know that you cannot do is take one type of a plant and graft it into another type of plant and have it work. I'll give you a case in point. A plum tree grafted into an orange tree will never work. An orange tree grafted into an orange tree will work almost every time. They're almost, a dunce could graft an orange tree. But a plum tree, kind of almost the same thing. If you know anything about it at all you have to do is put the right layers to where they touch each other and it'll graft and everything's good. But you can't graft the two. You can't do it. Okay? It's just one example. Grapes and blackberries, you can't do it. How many more lists could we come up with? Multitudes of lists. You might be thinking, well, they have these trees that have pears, apples, all these different kinds on it. Yeah, but they only grow to be about 4 years old, 5 years old, and they die. Every one of them will always do that because you can't get it to work. But if I'm grafted in to a good vine, stump, then there's no reason why it shouldn't work. If I'm not part of that group, then I can't be grafted in. I can take a Jonathan apple, put it in with graft it to a Golden Delicious apple, and it'll work. It's part of that group. I can take a particular type of cherry tree and graft it to another type of cherry tree, and it'll work. I don't like doing it. I think it's stupid. Keep them the same. But it's all part of that group. If it's not part of that group, it is not going to work. Well, Christ grafted us in. He paid for the right to graft us in. And if we're not part of the group, that graft is not going to work. If it's just that I'm playing church, it's not going to work. If I'm raising my hand as a kid because everybody else is raising their hand and I'm not part of that group, it's not going to work. The graft will not hold. It might start out, it could do a little bit and then just crash and burn. But it's never going to work if you aren't part of that group. Now, none of us really fit into that group. But Christ makes us where we can. There you go. Now, I can be grafted in and it'll work. When Christ says, okay, I redeemed you, I bought you back. Now all you got to do is let me graft you in. And he pulls out his little skewer and he cuts a little cut and he sticks that scion in there and he wraps it up and a graft grows. But what happens? If the graft doesn't bear fruit, it's a useless graft. The stories the illustrations are endless with this. But Jesus talked about all these different things time after time after time. Well, what does all that have to do with this? Why am I going down a grafting route with this? Because she wasn't part of the group, but she was made part of the group. Because the Redeemer did his job. Might we say she was grafted in to that group? The Redeemer made her to where she fit. How does it work? I don't know. I don't have a clue. How could I? All I know, I'm kind of like that guy that was blind and Jesus healed him. All I know is I wasn't, now I am. The only one who did it was this guy Jesus. I don't know how it happened. Ask him. All I know is I was not. Now I am. I don't care how it worked. I know. And that's good enough for me. If you don't like it, tough. If you need more explanation, tough. I don't have it. But I know that I've been bought back. And that's the same thing we see with Ruth. She was bought, paid for, and became the bride of the Redeemer. Perpetuation was made as a result. How many of us are barren children? Are barren wives, so to speak? How many of us have produced children? She produced children that would perpetuate this. And the line would not stop because of it. And we see churches going from hundreds of people down to nothing. Let me suggest this. Those are the people who are grafted in that are ready to produce fruit. The rest of them were acting like it. When the government says things, shut down. Okay. Whole church is just gone. I can remember Kelso, Washington, many years back, would have been late 80s, early 90s. A church there preaching the Word of God got in trouble for it because it wasn't zoned for it, even though the church had been there for over 100 years. And it wasn't zoned for it, and they came one Sunday and they had chains and locks on their doors that the government had put on there, and had no trespassing signs and the like, and they were not allowed to meet. That was back then. What's that been, probably 40 years ago? What a joke. How sad. And people go, well, okay. You know what that church did? It started meeting in homes. I know right where they met. I could take you to the house. I don't know what road it was on. I can take it by name, but I can take you there. It's off to the east side of the freeway a little ways and down kind of a long, windy road. I helped move some furniture in there that I was working at the furniture store at the time. And that's why I know the story of what happened. Because I got to move furniture in as they were getting ready to meet in a house. You know, you can't, if you're really part of the family, you're really part of the family. If you're not, what good is it going to do for you to stay? And I see some of this stuff that we've seen as God pruning. Taking his clippers and going, you're no good. You're not, you're nothing. You're dead. You're dead. You're dead. Get off of the vine, quit wasting it. And that which is alive is there. What makes us alive? Our goodness? No. Our attendance at church? No. None of these things but Christ. That's it. That's all that works. Ruth was a person who didn't deserve it but was grafted in. I'm a person who didn't deserve it but was grafted in. You're a person who didn't deserve it but you were grafted in. Everybody has that opportunity because Christ paid for everybody. But most of the grafts just aren't going to take. Most of them the signs are going to get thrown away. Get out of here, I never knew you. But Lord, I said, get out of here, I never knew you. The others are going, what do you mean? When did I ever? Come on in. Good and faithful servant. Wide is the road, and straight is the path that leads to destruction. Narrow is the road that leads to life, and few there are that find it. Matthew 7. I want to say someplace in that area. It's not a direct quote of it, but it's something to that effect anyhow. Why do we not find ourselves engaged more often in doing this? Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. There's the big key to it right there. And when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Women said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a close relative, and may his name be famous in Israel, and may he be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is better to you than several sons, has borne him. The one who brought Ruth back, the one who brought her to a position of being able to be redeemed, was being blessed. How many of us are being blessed? I don't feel like God's blessing me. Well, why? Let's see. Maybe it's because you aren't doing anything. What did Ruth do? She brought Naomi to a position where she could be redeemed. I knew that. I knew that. Thank you. A little brain dyslexia there. I knew that. Thank you. Please keep in mind that I'm me. But now she's being blessed. Naomi's being blessed because she did what she was supposed to do. And we feel like God isn't blessing us. Well, why not? Because probably we're not doing what we're supposed to do. This isn't hard. The picture's already done. I could see God standing back going, I like that. That turned out just right. Because the picture was full circle. Now Naomi had brought back Ruth, now to be redeemed. Now Ruth was supplying prodigy for the Redeemer. So that the name wouldn't die. What a tremendous thought. Now Naomi's being blessed. We'll see later that Ruth was blessed. She ought to be grandmother of David. Started a line of royalty who was in David's line. Jesus. Who was in Jesus' line? Nobody. Not in that sense. Why? Didn't need it. Kind of the old buck stops here idea. Don't need that. What more do we need? What more? Now we all have that ability to be reproductive for Christ. He didn't need a wife, as some would teach. The book of Philip, this cockamamie set of writing that I don't believe ever even came from old days, but talks about how Jesus had a couple of wives and lots of kids. Why? That's not the way it works. The end of the line stopped with Jesus. Now it's up to us to go out, his bride, and bring in prodigy for Jesus. And then, God says, well, I'll see to it that you're blessed. But God, I don't feel like you're blessing me. Then get up and do something, doofus. I mean, how hard is this? You don't have to try that hard. Well, what do I have to do? Bring them in? No. Offer. Just offer. The woman can't have children by herself. All we have to do is offer. Let God do the work. I'm going to stop with that because I want to finish up next week. I want to revisit some of this that has to go a slightly different direction, and then finish up next week because we don't have time in 3 minutes to finish up the book. I don't know if you noticed, but I can make this last a little longer than that. Could I ask this as we close? So where are you at in it? Are you grafted in? If you're grafted in, what good are you? Are you doing good for Christ? Are you propagating? Are you bringing prodigy? Are you bearing children? Or are you a wife that's barren? In the Old Testament, it was a curse. It was because of you were looked at as cursed if you were barren. You see it in the starting stages of Israel. I don't want to carry that out any farther. I'll leave it with that. Where are you at? What's God doing in you and why? How is he doing it? And are you grafted in? Those are the questions I hope this leaves you with. You're in this story somewhere. What part are you? Oh, I hope it's a productive one. I hope it's productive. Let's close with prayer. Lord, thank you for loving us, for dying for us, for caring so much about us that you came to earth to redeem that which was lost, and that would be us. Help us to glorify you. Help us to bring you to the masses, that they may too have the opportunity. Knowingly, many of them will be like Naomi's, like Ruth's sister, that left and went back to their gods. But Lord, I pray that you would help us to see some fruit too. Thank you for what you're going to do in your name. Amen.